Welcome to the RotoRob.com Fantasy Football Weekly plus ATS Picks. Each week, your hosts Josh Johnson and Nick Wagner will give you the goods to help you win your fantasy football crown.
Straight cash, homie. Talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs?
Welcome to the RotoRob Fantasy Football Weekly. We are back after a 2-week extended Christmas break, or should I say that we are back. That's right, we have Charlie Blatch joining us, former NFL quarterback, joining us here in just a few minutes. Nick, how was your Christmas break, man?
Oh, I had a great time. Spent Christmas with the family. It was always good to do, and I'm excited to be back talking football with you. How was yours, Josh?
Just good. Took a little trip to Denver over the last week. Enjoyed an NHL hockey game and a lot of food and relaxation and alcohol and time to start working out again, I guess. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that. It appears that Charlie is already on the line, so we'll get right to Charlie with the questions here. So patch him through. Charlie, are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
Good. I want to thank you so much for joining us, Charlie. Again, it's former NFL quarterback Charlie Blatch. Charlie, I understand you have a foundation called Best of the Batch. Why don't you just tell us a little bit what that's all about?
Yes, actually, the name of the foundation is Best of the Batch Foundation. We've been around now for 14 years, and we service over 3,100 kids annually with 13 different programs. And what we are, we're an educational foundation which uses sports to draw kids in. And then at that point, we're able to implement any educational component that we choose. And it's just been great to really be able to really expand the way that we have been over the last 14 years.
Okay, and if people wanted to give money to your foundation, they just need to go to the website, is that right?
Yes, you can go to batchfoundation.org. That'll give you a general idea of what we do throughout the calendar year. And you can see what we're doing. If you want to be part of it, we welcome that because we have many different programs. And for 11 months out of the year, we have programming going on.
Okay. Well, sounds very cool. And like I said, people listen to what Charlie's saying there. If you want to go donate money, that's what you need to do. So certainly sounds like a good foundation and a great work. Well, Charlie, like I said, so glad you could join us today. I just had a few questions here for you. Now, you were started 12 games as a rookie. Do you think that helped or hindered your development as an NFL quarterback?
No, it actually helped because I love to be thrown into the fire. I had an opportunity to do so in my third game of my rookie year. And when you're able to go out there and get that experience and you're watching film and you're learning in the off season, those are the things that that you're able to learn from. And that helped me not only at the beginning of my career, but it helped lengthen the end of my career because as you go through your season, the majority of the time now as you're a backup, you don't get a chance to get those reps because the starter is getting all of those reps. And coaches, they can trust you and they count on you to be able to step into a game and understanding the speed of the game, but at the same time knowing what the preparation is and how to prepare for a game. They knew I would be able to do that, so the coaches were able to count on me, and that's what kind of lasted my career.
Okay. So as far as, like, guys coming in the league nowadays, do you think that is suggested that they start right away?
Well, I guess everyone is different. I mean, right now, coaches, if you draft a quarterback high in the first round, you don't have the luxury anymore of letting that guy wait and develop 2 and 3 years down the line because so much money is invested in him. you have to, and basically your job is on the line if you can't develop a quarterback in the first round. So if everyone learns differently, coaches have to figure out what that formula is and getting that guy out there. So, for instance, you had, when I got into the league, there wasn't a lot that was expected of a young quarterback. And then all of a sudden, Ben Roethlisberger gets drafted in 2004, and he wins his first 14, 15 games, and it changed the whole mindset of how you prepare younger quarterbacks. So right now, if any young quarterback is coming into the league, he better be prepared to play.
Yeah, most definitely. It depends, I guess, on the quarterback and certainly the situation. You look back at a guy like David Carr, or even further back with Archie Manning. When these guys are sent, I feel like lambs to the slaughter. Pardon the expression. Just didn't have anything else come to mind. But yeah, I guess it just really depends on the situation. Nick, what do you got for Charlie?
Hi, Charlie. So one thing that's really bugged me a lot of times is hearing people say, being a backup quarterback's the easiest job in the world. You just have to hold a clipboard and get paid millions for it. And so I was just wondering if you could give us some insight into what you would do to prepare each week when you were the backup there in Pittsburgh so we can kind of try to dispel that myth.
Actually, it's pretty funny that people say that. And if people who go through it, they obviously will choose the latter because it's actually one of the toughest jobs in the league, and you have to be able, number one, to prepare every single week as if you're going to be the starter. You get no reps during the course of the week, and whenever you do finally get in, it may be week 13 in the middle of the fourth quarter, and it's 3rd and 13, and you have to go out there and produce, and you haven't thrown a pass since the preseason. So those are things you have to be able to learn, but also the one thing people forget when you go through a course of a week, you don't get any starter reps, but you're now preparing as if you're the other team quarterback. So you're running their plays all week. So you're running their plays trying to give your defense the best look, but at the same time having to know your assignment. It's a tough balance between the two, and a lot of guys don't survive that way because either when you get into the game, either it's feast or fathom, and there is no in between. So a lot of guys, when they do have the opportunity to play, they don't last long because they're not capable of going out there showing that they can produce. So, because I did play at a younger age, that allowed me the opportunity to be able to go in and step in the game when it counted because my teammates and coaches trusted me.
Yeah, exactly like what you said earlier. Just starting as young as you did helped you prepare for that, certainly, and knowing how to be the backup too. That's a very good point there. So you played with a lot of great players, but who was the best wide receiver and offensive lineman you think you ever played with?
Oh, wow. I think the best wide receiver that I've played with was a guy by the name of Jermaine Crowell, who was actually in Detroit. He was drafted with me in second round in 1998 draft, and he had the potential to be one of the best. And unfortunately, in his third year, he tore up his knee. I think he tore up his ACL, his patella tendon. He basically ripped the whole knee apart and never was the same after that. But if he was one of those guys that didn't get injured, he would be one of the best that people will be talking about right now. And unfortunately, his career was shortened because of injury. When you talk about the offensive linemen, they're tough because I played with Alan Faneca, who was a Pro Bowl starter for many, many years here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And toward the end of my career, I played with Marquise Pouncey. And Marquise Pouncey will be one of the best centers to ever play this game if he can remain healthy. And he has that potential. He made Pro Bowl 3 of the 4 years that he's been in this league. So, I've been fortunate enough to play with those two, but I have to say, where the arrow is pointed up, you would have to say Marquise Pouncey right now.
Okay. Yeah, in case people out there don't know, I'm looking it up here. Jermaine Crowell, second season with the Lions, had 81 receptions for 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. Those are certainly numbers that tell you probably exactly what he was capable of. So, yeah, it is kind of a sad thing for what somebody that happens to somebody like that. And Charlie, too, it's probably one of those things that seems like, and I know that his situation was different where he tore the thing apart, probably not as bad as Napoleon McCallum, but I feel like every year those injuries, recovery time is less and less. We saw Adrian Peterson come back from the ACL. It's a shame that some of these older guys, you think all the way back to Gale Sayers. I don't know why I keep turning the clock back today. I'm just feeling nostalgic, I guess. I mean, he was basically could never play again after he hurt his knee, and with modern technology, who knows what some of these guys could have done. So there's probably a lot of Jermaine Crowells out there that we just don't know about. So Nick, do you have another question there for Charlie?
Yeah, you were fortunate enough to get to play with two of the greatest running backs of all time, in Barry Sanders and Jerome Bettis. They could have been more opposite in their styles, though. So I was wondering, from a quarterback's perspective, would you prefer a guy like Barry, who could at any time go for a 70-yard touchdown, but also at times is going to take 4-yard losses, putting you in second and third and long? Or would you rather have a guy like Jerome Bettis, way less flashy, but you're pretty much guaranteed positive yards every time he touches the ball?
Yeah, that's a tough question because both offenses were different, and it fit the back that was in there. And when you look at everyone talking about Jerome Bettis, you know, he was a downhill runner, but he didn't give you much in the passing game. But he was a solid and consistent runner and should be in the Hall of Fame. And when he finished his career, he was the 5th all-time leading rusher, and I was fortunate enough to play with him for a number of years. So, but then on the flip side, you have Barry Sanders, who's capable of taking it to distance every single play. But when you look at a player who's had a minus 1,000 yards in his career, you know, he put quarterbacks in tough situations because there were a lot of second and long, third and long situations because you knew he was thinking about breaking that long run to break the game open, and he did so in his career. When you finish number 2 in the National Football League in your career, I mean, if he would have played another 3 to 5 years, he would be the all-time leading rusher, and we wouldn't even be talking about Emmitt Smith at this particular time. So it was tough because I've only played 1 year with Barry Sanders, and I was fortunate enough to play 5 years with Jerome Bettis. So it was, you know, both of those players were great. I was fortunate enough to play with two of the best of all time, and I'm just blessed to be able to do so. So I guess when you ask that question, it's very tough to answer which one you would have because they're in both different. There were two different offenses.
Let's just say it'd be great to line up under center and look back and see both of them. That'd be pretty awesome.
Absolutely, it was. Absolutely.
Charlie, before we let you go, do you have a favorite NFL moment?
There's a couple of them. Obviously, having the opportunity to start on Thanksgiving, my first year in Detroit, playing against the hometown Steelers. That was a big moment for me. We ended up winning that ball game in Detroit. That was the famous coin flip game. Jerome said heads, tails in the air, and I was the starter on the other side, and that changed that was history, and that changed the way that the coin flip was actually called, because not only you were no longer able to call the coin flip in the air, you had to call it before the referee actually flipped the coin. So that changed history, and I was part of that. And then coming back home to Pittsburgh and winning 2 Super Bowls and being able to do so with the hometown team, something that wasn't done in 25 years. In 2005, from the last time they won the Super Bowl, you win it again a couple years later, and for me to go out the way that I did against Baltimore and playing against a game that heading into Baltimore, there was a 15-game winning streak. The Steelers was never able to beat Baltimore without Ben Roethlisberger, and to do so in their house, and to be able to go down and take over 6 minutes off of the clock, drive down for a game-winning field goal, and win and beat them and snap their consecutive home winning streak during that time, and it was special. It was a special moment for me to be able to do so, and then to see on top of that Baltimore win the Super Bowl, and you're just like, wow, you know, I beat the Super Bowl champs in their house before they went on their win streak to win the Super Bowl. Man, it was special, and those are moments that I won't forget. And that was for me to be able to cap out a 15-year career. Man, it was fun to be a part of, and I was blessed to be able to do so.
Nick, do you have any other questions there for Charlie?
I think we pretty much hit on anything. What's your opinion on the Steelers moving forward into 2015?
Well, I think right now there's going to be a lot of questions. I think the number one question is addressing Ben Roethlisberger's contract situation. They'll go out there, they'll finalize that, and once they get that, then they'll know what they're working with as it relates to the rest of the cap. But they have to continue to get younger on defense. I think they'll address the secondary throughout the free agency and in the draft. So there'll be what you've seen in 2014, you won't see in 2015. But if they're able to improve that defense, all the weapons that they have coming back on offense, Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Marcus Wheaton, and then when you add Le'Veon Bell to the mix, man, he's a special player, and he will continue to do so throughout the course of his years in the league. And they only can get better because they're young and they're productive. So they're going to be an exciting team. They're going to be a team that will be picked as a Super Bowl contender next year. So if they can get all the pieces together, man, it'll be a historic run next year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, a lot of young talent on that team, and since you mentioned it, I'm not sure how close you are to the team, but can you rest some fantasy owner minds here and tell us that Le'Veon's going to be all right for next year?
Oh yeah, Le'Veon will be all right next year. That knee injury, he'll bounce back. I think if they would have been being able to move forward this week, he would have been able to at least play a little bit. I don't know how good he would have came into that game, but at least he'd been able to participate of this game. But either way, he'll be one of the top picks next fantasy draft.
Yeah, certainly had a one heck of a season. Charlie, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Man, I honestly don't know. I mean, I think I've seen coming out of the NFC, I do like Seattle, so they'll have a chance to repeat. I think they'll probably be Seattle and New England. Ultimately, Seattle I think they will win it again because their defense is too strong if they can stay healthy throughout the playoffs. Yeah,
definitely. Is it okay for you former Steelers and current Steelers to cheer for the people in your division, or do you not do that?
I mean, once you're knocked out, I mean, it doesn't matter at that point. So players will turn around and say, you have some people say, hey, I can't root for Baltimore now because, I'm like, why not? You're knocked out. You should want to root for the AFC team. So at least give them an opportunity to say AFC is standing tall at the end of the season. For me, it didn't matter. I just wanted to see a good game. And either way, if I have people who are on teams, selfishly, you're picking people for different reasons. Like myself, I would love to see Denver win it and see Emmanuel Sanders win his first Super Bowl because I was a teammate of his. So there are different storylines that go along with it. For me, it don't matter. I just like to see it's easier whenever you do win the Super Bowl, and because I was part of 2 winning Super Bowl teams, it's easy for me to root for anybody because I've won it and I know the experience and that with that confetti coming down over your head. So it's a lot easier for me to root for people.
Okay. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the insight from somebody that's actually been there, and have a great day, sir.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and if anybody wants to follow what we do throughout the year, you can go to charliebatch.com. You can follow me on, you can see all my social media posts as well, charliebatch.com.
Yep, and we'll have that all hot in the link for this podcast when it's up. So thank you, Charlie.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good day. Certainly, some fine insight there from, like I said, a former NFL quarterback. Played with some absolutely amazing players and had some good success himself. So that was good stuff there. So a couple of things that we'll get to today. Of course, we're going to do a little tribute to Stuart Scott. I don't know how we cannot. Nick's going to rant about a certain owner. We'll talk a little AP and Ray Rice. Get a little, just, I don't know, philosophically suggestible. No, that doesn't make any sense. But anyway, Jimmy Graham, we'll talk about, of course, the Cowboys, Lions versus the refs. We have to talk about that. Ryan Lindley's scouting report. Talk a little bit about Jordan Reed, best to wear number 4 in NFL history. It's been a while since we've done that, so get back on that. I'll do a little Nick Foles versus Matthew Stafford, and a little bit later, from straight out of Brookings, Nate Stacken is going to be joining us to talk about South Dakota State running back Zach Zenner. He is an NFL prospect going to the Combine, so it's pretty sweet to have another guy from my area that's potentially going to be drafted next year. Talk a little bit about the Giants' offense, and of course we'll get to some ATS picks because the playoffs are still going. But anyway, Nick, what can you say about Stuart Scott and what he's meant to people like us and just sports fans and athletes in general?
Well, I mean, just a class act. He was one of the greatest sportscasters of all time, you have to say. And everything that I've read about him says that he was just as great a person off the field or off camera as he was a sportscaster on camera. And the thing that really sticks out to me about Stuart Scott is, you hear so many of these announcers and they try to be humorous or make little catchphrases or whatever, and it just seems so forced a lot of the times. But with him, it was always so natural. All the little, cooler than the other side of the pillow, all the things he would, say just was so natural with Stuart Scott. He will definitely be missed. Yeah,
the cool as the other side of the pillow. I mean, he made me laugh every single time that I had the pleasure to watch him. And like it just seemed to come natural to him, and he seemed to own the room or own the stage, whatever he was on. And certainly a huge loss for only being 49 years old. I mean, if you haven't seen the just a minute and a half Rich Eisen tribute for Stewart, it's absolutely amazing. Of course, Rich is probably the person that spent the most time with him as probably a Sports Center anchor. So it's a phenomenal thing to watch, and he certainly will be missed. Yeah, it's a hard thing to swallow, and I know it happened a few days ago already, but I feel like something that we had to talk about just because he was such an inspiration to so many people with cancer and a lot of young broadcasters as well. So each and every week we do a little something that I like to call Nick Rants, one of my favorite moments of the week. Now, it's been since December 17th since I've had the pleasure to hear one of these, so of course I am excited to hear Nick rant about the St. Louis, the Rams owner, we'll say.
So apparently the Rams owner, Stan Kroenke, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Really, I'm so sick of him right now, I don't even care if I'm pronouncing it right. But anyway, Stan Kroenke is planning on moving the team to L.A., come hell or high water. He's already purchased a plot of land in Inglewood and announced he's building a stadium there. And supposedly he's informed the mayor there he's moving the team whether or not the other NFL owners approve. What? No, sorry, Kroenke, you may own the team, but the team is part of a larger organization, the NFL, and must abide by the rules of the league, which state, among other provisions, that all relocations must be approved by 24 of the 32 owners, period. Now, this move wouldn't happen until 2016, meaning there could be a very awkward season coming up in St. Louis in 2015. With the owner pulling a very obvious money grab, I don't know why anybody in St. Louis would support the team next year. His arrogance being displayed by Mr. Kroenke is just incredible to me. I mean, hey, you want to move the Rams wherever and whenever you feel like it? Here's what you do. Pull Vince McMahon, start your own league like the XFL. You own all the teams, including your Rams, which would have to leave the NFL to be in your new league, and then you can move them at will. Otherwise, I guess you'll just have to follow the NFL rules regarding relocation. I actually kind of hope the other owners vote against the move just out of spite to teach them a lesson that, hey, no team and no owner is above the shield. And, of course, I'm usually opposed to teams moving, but this one just seems even dirtier and greedier than most of them. Josh?
Oh, what would Al Davis say? That's what I want to know. Anyway, I don't like to pay too much attention to this stuff. And you think I would be a little well-versed in teams moving, being a Raiders fan, but I just don't know. They're gonna. I think ultimately NFL is going to probably let him do what he wants to do. But like you said, yeah, a real awkward season. He sounds like he's trying to be Al Davis, but I mean, come on. There's only one evil owner in the NFL right now, and I'll let you guys decide who I think that is. But I just don't get it. But yeah, awkward season. I don't know. I mean, this is all coming up again, but I'm pretty sure he purchased that land like a year ago, almost probably to the day. So it's certainly something that's been out there. I don't know if, attendance is struggling there or whatnot, but I certainly makes for an interesting story. And it seems so weird to me that a team that left the city would actually move back there. But I don't know. Yeah, it's weird, and I think what he wants to do is going to probably happen. So we'll see. But yeah, sorry, St. Louis fans. Maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe you can get the Jaguars. I guess we'll see. And apparently there's a side note to this whole story that stadium should be able to house two teams. I don't know what they have to do to make the stadium be able to do that. So don't be sitting tight there in Oakland, there, Raiders fans. Don't ever put it past a Davis to move them back. So moving on, Nick, what do you think about Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson? Where do you think they're going to play next season?
Well, start with Ray Rice. I think he's probably done. You know, you look at his yardage totals. He went from 1,043 yards with 4.4 yards per carry average in 2012 to only 660 yards and 3.1 yards per attempt in 2013. And that's still playing for 15 games. Whereas Adrian Peterson, 1,266 yards, 4.5 yards per carry in 2013. Yeah, that was down from over 2,000 yards the year before, but that's still pretty good. So that's his last year. For AP, I think there's a lot of intriguing landing spots. At 30, he's probably not an every down workhorse. If he wants to be that, I think he's going to have to sign with a sub-500 team, somebody like Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Oakland, Tennessee, Jacksonville, maybe the Jets. I think all those teams would like to have him. But if I'm Adrian Peterson, I'd rather go to a playoff team in kind of a committee situation, preferably on a team that's got big stars that's going to attract attention away from me. Something like New England, they love adding running backs. Indy, if they decide to get rid of Trent Richardson, I'd say those are two front runners, with maybe Baltimore being a good fit, but they wouldn't want the attention after the Ray Rice thing. So I think the next two choices would probably be like San Diego and maybe Arizona.
Yeah, all those teams need quarterbacks. And forgive me if you didn't say it, but for some reason I just want to put the names New England and Dallas out there. And I don't want to say who's going to go where, but I feel like maybe either one of those teams could end up with one of each of those guys. We're going to get to it here in the next coming weeks, but if last year was short a little bit on big names in the free agent market, I know a lot of things could happen here within the next month, but holy cow, there is some big-name free agents. DeMarco Murray, Dominican Sue, Michael Crabtree, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas. That's going to be interesting off-season leading up to the draft, that's for sure. So, Nick, interesting question here I thought I could pose now that the NFL season is over, and let's just stick with the regular season. If there was one game you could have went to this regular season, which one would you choose?
Now, I put a lot of thought into this, and I'll admit it's a strange choice because this game didn't feature a lot of big plays, and no team scored over 30 points. There was no last-second heroics. But since personally I've never seen Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers live, I would go with the New England at Green Bay in Week 13. Green Bay won the game 26-21. The two quarterbacks combined to throw 73 passes, 0 interceptions, just two of the best field generals in the league going to battle. Plus, if I was at the game, I wouldn't have had to listen to Phil Simms call the game, so that's kind of a bonus. If I went with a homer pick, it would obviously be when Colt McCoy led the Redskins over Dallas, but I'd probably still go with the New England Green Bay.
This, I don't know why this is the first thing that popped in my head, but it was. I would have loved to be in Buffalo for Johnny Manziel's first start. I just think that would have. I would have been there with our staff writer Vonnie Hariri, just sitting in the end zone, just yelling at Johnny the whole time. I think that would have been an absolute blast. And of course, Oakland beating KC also popped into my mind for their first win of the year as they were 0-10 or 0-11. It happened so long ago, I can't remember. But I just think that would have been fun to, or maybe sit by the Browns sideline and just chant Johnny, what fill in the blank or whatever you want to do. I think that would have been a lot of fun. Moving on. Should Dynasty owners be worried about Jimmy Graham? I know the team had really took a major step back, but he seemed to be hurt most of the year, and hopefully he can get whatever's bothering him ironed out for next year. But obviously, I am a Jimmy Graham Dynasty owner. Took him in the first round of our draft last year, Nick. Should I be worried?
Maybe a little bit, but not overly so, at least on the injury front. The shoulder injury he struggled with this year. He still had 889 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's been in the NFL for 5 years, 4 years of being a all-star player, and he's never played less than 15 games in a season. And he signed a 4-year deal last summer, so the contract issues are behind him. I think he could easily break out again next year.
Yeah, one thing that does worry me now is he's probably not worth that first round selection. He's probably not the clear-cut best tight end like he was probably last year at this time, going into going into next season. That's certainly probably the case. Here we go. Now, I'm going to start this one because we're talking Lions, Cowboys versus the refs. Now, I know the phantom flag, PI late, but I want to wind the clock back to the first quarter. Detroit's up 7-0. They punt from their own end zone. That running into the kicker was about as ticky-tack as you can get. I don't think he actually even touched the punter. He sold it. That's one of those things where more likely than not, I think the flag's thrown probably 20% of the time. And if that game was in Detroit, well, maybe. I guess, geez, I was going for the home team. But anyway, I thought that call was pretty ticky-tack. And if you watch that same drive when that kept the game alive or the drive alive for the Lions, you watch that same drive where Reggie Bush ultimately scores that 18-yard touchdown, Corey Fuller is basically bear hugging one of the safeties for the Cowboys. So, I mean, yeah, Detroit maybe needs an excuse to blow a 14-point lead, but they were gifted that second touchdown as far as I'm concerned. So I know things happened later on, and it didn't look very good, and the NFL's apologized, but I just wanted to put that out there before anybody else has a word. So, Nick, what do you got for us?
Yeah, newsflash, there's bad officiating in the NFL. I know there's been a lot of conspiracy theories floated out. I don't believe those. I just think that's incompetence. I don't know if they need more like penalties for the refs for blown calls, but I would say maybe think about employing one or two refs at the pro level. I mean, do they have more bumps on the field in the NFL than in college? The game's way faster, so why not have more eyes so each set of eyes is responsible for less calls or whatever. I think also they need to open up pass interference and some other penalties to reviews and maybe give coaches one more challenge per game to compensate for that. And I think they should let the referee crews that work together throughout the season to grade out the best go to the playoffs as a crew together. They've proven that they can work well together. If you look at New England or Denver, I bet they would destroy an NFC Pro Bowl team that only had 1 week to prepare for them just because they're used to working together. So I think the ref squads could benefit from that change.
Yeah, and if you really want to, bitch about every play, when the game was still a game for Cincy and Indy, Indy's playing with their, Mohamed Sanu and a bunch of nobodies at wide receiver thanks to some inactives. Tate, I don't even know what Brandon Tate, I believe is his name, had a seam route straight down the middle of the field, and one of the DBs for Indy straight up elbowed him in the chest like way before the ball got there, and absolutely no flag. I don't know if that was a home team's conspiracy or not, but I mean, there's calls in every game that you can complain about. I would say more often than not, the NFL officials do a pretty good job. Maybe there's a couple questionable calls every game, but it's like that in every sport. I mean, basketball, hockey, baseball, whatever you want to say. It's like that in every sport. They can't see everything. Maybe expanding replay would help, but I'm sure there was a lot. There's holding. Some of you guys will tell you. Defensive players will tell you there's holding on every play. So, it's one of those things where I think you really still got to keep the game moving. I don't think the NFL is, in danger of losing fans because of that. But it's a hard call, a very hard call. But don't complain. I guess I don't know. You have the right to complain, I should say, but maybe one or two calls every game is going to happen. That was unfortunately in the playoffs on a national stage, and it's going to be brutal. But speaking of brutal, Arizona starting quarterback, who was a third stringer at the start of the year, took a lot of flack on Twitter during and after Saturday's loss. Nick, what do you think about Ryan Lindley as a whole? And let's remember, people, he started the year as a third-string quarterback. Now, we talked earlier with Charlie about how he was supposed to prepare and whatnot, but there was a reason he was a third-string quarterback. And let's cut the guy a little bit of slack. I know he had an opportunity, but what did you think?
You know what? don't see a reason really why Ryan Lindley's on a roster. He looks the part. He's big. He's got a good arm, but when the ball leaves his hands, it's just so inaccurate. I just can't remember seeing such bad accuracy from a quarterback without just really obvious flaws in his throwing mechanics. I just got to wonder how bad must Logan Thomas look in practice not to have gotten a chance to start at all over the last month.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way about Logan Thomas. Everybody talks about what a cannon he has, and maybe they should have let him come out there for one play at the end of the first half to see what he could do, throwing the ball downfield. But, I like you said, you don't see a reason he's on the roster. And, it's not like people got to remember, it's not like Bruce Arians said, okay, Carson and Drew, sit down. We're gonna let Ryan play. It's the playoffs. It's not like they pulled a, Music City Miracle game and started Rob Johnson over Doug Flutie. It's man, I'm really rolling back the clock today. He's a third string quarterback, people. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I mean, would they rather have Johnny Manziel or Tony Banks? It's been a while since you talked about him. But anyway, yeah, he's a third string quarterback for a reason. Unfortunately, things just did not work out for Arizona after an amazing start to the season. And I felt a little sympathy for the guy because people were just burying on him. And I was included. I got myself involved in the burying of the Lindley. But he's going to remain a third-string quarterback. He didn't seize the opportunity like he could. And, if he's not on the roster next year, I don't think anybody will be surprised. But, he's a third-string quarterback, people, trying to win a playoff game against the team that was there the year before. So just keep that all in mind. What do you think about your boy in Washington, Nick, Jordan Reed? Will he peak again? Do you think he's got some future still? I know he's still very young.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he is young, so I think he will probably peak again, but he's probably going to be pretty inconsistent. He's very talented physically, but, he's really injury-prone, and he's a victim of a very inconsistent offense, both from production and a personnel standpoint. But, hey, when you look at Jordan Reed when he came out of college, everybody called him an Aaron Hernandez clone, so at least he's got a lot brighter future than Mr. Hernandez right now, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. What do you think about? No, it seems like I know they drafted one late last year, but it seems to me that the Redskins both have they have Reed and they have Niles Paul. I know there's a couple Logan Paulson. It seems like maybe Reed, though he's got the size, but he's not your prototypical NFL tight end. Do you think a move to wide receiver would maybe help him out? In terms of the injuries?
You mean just as far as not having to line up against linebackers and bigger guys like that?
Yeah,
possibly.
Don't you think that would help keep him healthy?
Possibly. I think you could see the Redskins use him similar to the way the Saints use Jimmy Graham. Obviously, he's not anywhere near as talented as Jimmy Graham, but, just as far as how they line him out wide and line him out as a wide receiver and don't keep him in line like the standard tight end sets. Yeah, I definitely could see that.
I know I didn't really prepare for this, but maybe just, and this is completely different avenue here, but could you give us your thoughts? Maybe are you blaming the Cincinnati loss on Andy Dalton? Let's remember he was missing his top two target getters.
Yeah, that's what I blame it on completely. Without A.J. Green or Jermaine Gresham, I don't think they really had a chance to beat the Indianapolis Colts, even though the Colts, don't forget, they were without their all-pro running back Trent Richardson. Maybe that's the reason that the Colts won, was just because Trent Richardson didn't play.
Wow, okay. But anyway, there are people are all over. I saw a couple stories, and I don't know why I always feel the need to defend the Red Rifle, but I do. That's just how it is. He brought his team to the playoffs 4 straight seasons in his first 4 straight seasons. Peyton Manning didn't do that. I'm not saying he's Peyton Manning, people. Settle down. But if I was to tell you could draft a quarterback and he's going to make the playoffs for the first 4 straight years, nobody, no NFL GM would be crazy to say no. I mean, who cares if he do? I mean, I know he hasn't won a game, and that's the thing. He can't win, blah 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 when the stakes are. But he's making the playoffs, and there's certainly something to be said for that. And they're not going to cut him tomorrow. He's still going to be their quarterback next year. So just settle down. And I feel like a lot of the people that are banging on him are not Bengals fans. I know certainly some Bengals fans are probably low on, but I think those guys are pretty loyal to the Red Rifles. So I think he'll certainly be okay as his season goes on. So,
and if they were to cut Andy Dalton, I think teams would be lining up around the block to sign him.
My gosh. Yes. Yeah, he absorbed that big contract and he's trying to do what he can. But yeah, he certainly has a future. Now, a segment that we introduced a little while ago, kind of going through the numbers. It's going to take us a while, but hey, we need some longevity at this podcast, so why not? The best to wear, number 4 in NFL history. Nick, what do you got for us?
Well, first off, I can't wait till we get past the kickers' numbers. But we'll start with Adam Vinatieri. He's a possible Hall of Famer. You can't say that about many kickers. And a couple other guys, John Casey played for 19 years. Jason Hanson had a 20-year career. But come on, there's no question it's Brett Favre. 71,000 yards passing, 508 touchdowns. He had that consecutive starts record, and he did that while getting sacked 525 times. Well, 524. That Strahan was kind of a gift. I don't know if we should count that one. But, there's so many records. And I know this doesn't make much sense, but to me, 3 quarterback of all time, but he may be the greatest football player of all time. Yeah, at least in my time. I know that doesn't make sense, but that's just kind of how I see it.
Well, you didn't mention Derek Carr. I think his future is very bright, I'll put it that way. But, yeah, I really don't know what else a kicker could do to make the Hall of Fame the first time around, or just to make the Hall of Fame in general, than Adam Vinatieri. I mean, even at his age, I know age is not necessarily an issue with kickers, but even at his age, he missed 1 kick this year. It's I don't know what else he can do to there's Favre, but there's Vinatieri. You got to put him in there, and of course he is from Rapid City, South Dakota. So I gotta represent a little bit there. But Vinatieri was phenomenal. Brett Favre, he really, I think he hurt himself towards the end of his career as far as legacy. Whether you want to toss that term around or not. But he certainly was a phenomenal player in his day, and Packers fans will always have that to talk about because he was fun. He made the game fun because he had fun, and there's really no way to get around that. I know he kind of wasted away the last part of his career, but he certainly made the game fun. Nate is going to join us here in a couple minutes, but maybe you'll go first and I'll go after you on this. But what do we think? You're starting an NFL expansion franchise, not a fantasy team. You're starting an NFL expansion franchise, and you can sign either Nick Foles or Matthew Stafford. Knowing what we know now, obviously, what do you got for us?
Well, to me, this decision would all come down to the salary I'd have to pay him. If it's Nick Foles at $3 to $5 million a year or Matt Stafford at $16 to $20 million a year, I'll take Foles every time. If their salaries were equal, I'd probably go with Matt Stafford. Stafford seems to underachieve, but he does have a better arm than Foles, I think. But you'd also have to look at what coach system you have in place, too. If you have a West Coast offense, Nick Foles might be a little bit better fit, whereas if you're running some old-school Al Davis deep ball offense, you would definitely want Matt Stafford in that situation.
Look at you working Al Davis into the conversation. I like it. It's the salary is something I didn't think about, but that is a very good point. I still would harken back to Stafford's injury history and get a little bit worried. I know Foles missed most of the season this year, but I think he's got a little bit less wear and tear on him. So if I'm starting a team right now, I'm probably going to go Foles. And I think the fact that he is younger, and I think he'd be more adaptable and more open to starting a franchise. Essentially starting a franchise. The Lions were certainly in major disarray when Stafford took over. He took his lumps and has gotten this team far, but they still need to do something to get over that Schneid or the refs, I guess we could say. But I feel like Foles would be the better fit, especially with the mindset. And we got to think about the Calvin Johnson, mirage that Stafford lives in too. I think that would be big. To see him play a whole year without somebody like that would be certainly interesting. So we have Nate Stacken on the phone. Nate, are you there?
Yes, I am, Josh. How are you doing today?
Good. Now, how are you doing today, sir?
Good. Now, is it true I just followed up with Charlie Blatch?
Yes, you did. You just followed up former NFL two-time winning Super Bowl.
I never thought I never thought I'd follow up behind a Super Bowl champion. So it's pretty good company to keep.
Yes. And we did take 2 weeks off for Christmas, but coincidentally, we've had 2 NFL players in the last 3 weeks on this podcast. So we got a lot to live up to. I don't know who we're going to have on next week, but yes, we had Ross Tucker on way back in December 10th. So we're going to have to get on that. But
you might have a Stacken or another professional football player on at some point.
And that's why we have Nate on to talk today. Look at you just taking that segue. I love it. But Nate, you have your own radio show, and you also have a blog that you call stackattack.com. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So just kind of getting back into it, I had some computer issues, was sick for a little bit there. So the blog took a little bit of a time off, but I do have a sports blog taking a look at the top stories from each day, try and get it out 4 or 5 days a week. Heavy into football, though, during the football season with picks and predictions, everything on Fridays and recaps on Mondays. As you mentioned, too, I have a sports talk radio show on Tuesday nights from 6 to 8. That's on 90.7 KSDJ and KSDJradio.com out of the Brookings, South Dakota.
Okay, so I've actually been on your show. Thank you again for that. You were on our draft show as well. So this is the second time Nate will be joining us. But, of course, we are here to talk about Zach Zenner. And if you don't know who that is, you probably don't follow Missouri Valley football. But Zach is, well, I guess you could take it, but he's basically a running back from South Dakota State. And I'll let Nate get into all the accolades and kind of what he is. Yep. What do you got for us, bud?
Well, he's one. I think he's the only player to have 2,000 plus rushing yards in 3 consecutive seasons. He won a bunch of awards and accolades this just a few weeks ago. I think he won the inaugural Mickey Charles Award, awarded to an FCS player. He's on the All-State Good Hands team. He's an academic All-American. Basically, he's besides being a fantastic football player, he's just a great human being. He finished 11 yards short of the all-time rushing record at the FCS level in their loss to the Bison back in December in the quarterfinals. Had the Jackrabbits won that game, he certainly would be the record holder. Not bad for a kid that was overlooked from schools like the University of Minnesota.
Yeah. No, I guess I don't follow, and I couldn't really see a lot of film on him, but he's entering the combine. He is going to the combine. Got that invite as a fullback. Now, wasn't he a tailback in college?
He was. Yep. He was a running back there. I think he's only the second player from South Dakota State ever to receive an invite from their tight end Steve Hyden back in '99. Was the only other player, if memory serves me correct, to get an invitation to the combine. I think he's going as a running back. He could be as a fullback too. I'm not sure, but I think he's going to be a fit in the NFL somewhere. He's got this deceptive speed where he's very patient. He'll wait for his blockers, and once he sees that hole, he'll get through there, and then you can look at defenders and say, oh, they're going to catch him, and then he breaks away from them. So when you look at him initially, he doesn't have that breakaway speed. He's not Randy Moss or, doesn't have maybe the Adrian Peterson style quickness. But boy, he gets away from a lot of defenders. He shakes off a lot of tackles, and he's done this against good competition too. He's put up big games this year against Missouri. He's had big games against Kansas, Nebraska. So it's not. Granted, the competition is a little lower in the Missouri Valley and the FCS level than it would be in the Big 10 or the Big 12. But don't let that fool you. This guy's going to have a spot in the NFL. I think he will definitely get drafted. It's just kind of a matter of where, and I think the Combine can help him. I would hope it will help him. It could hurt a little bit because, look at his pro day. Look at what Teddy Bridgewater went through last year. But I think that Zenner is going to go in there and he's going to really turn some heads.
Okay. Now, and it could be one of those things where I know a lot of major websites have him listed as fullback, but maybe because of the small non-Division I school, they're just not exactly sure where to place him. Kind of the whole defensive end, outside linebacker thing. They're not sure where he's going to work into the playoffs into the.
He certainly could be a fullback too. He's very good with his hands. He can get out of the backfield. He's pretty good at blocking. I think the true calling is the running back, but then again, you don't see a lot of white running backs in the NFL. I could think of Toby Gerhart right now is pretty much the one that's had any success real recently. But I think wherever the team wants him in the NFL, whether it be at the running back position or fullback, I think he'll accept that challenge and he'll thrive in it.
Okay. Nick, did you have any questions there about Zach?
Yeah, I know one thing NFL teams worry about when looking at college kids is are they a product of the system? So I was wondering if the program there at South Dakota State has a history of big numbers from the running backs.
I don't think so. What's interesting about them is that there are a lot of offensive linemen that keep rotating in and out, but so he hasn't been able to go with the same group of guys year in and year out. So he's constantly had to work with different linemen. And for South Dakota State, if there's a playmaker there, they're gonna go through him. There's a young freshman wide receiver there now that's going to turn some heads. It did turn heads already this year, Jake Wenicky. So I think wherever the playmakers are, that's where SDSU is going to funnel their system through, and it's tough not to get the ball in Zach Zenner's hands for as many yards as he can go. So I guess to answer the question, I don't believe that there's been a long history of prototypical or productive running back there that SDSU would hone their offense into, but Zenner's certainly a special case, and they really tailored the offense to try and get him the ball as much as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned the wide receiver and whatnot, but you have didn't your quarterback set?
Austin Sumner. Yep.
Yeah,
he's senior too.
Okay, yeah, he's a Brandon boy like myself, but I mean, I'm looking at your stats right now. Your quarterbacks threw for 1,900 and 1,600 yards. So they certainly throw the ball. That's those two guys essentially starters combined, but they certainly throw the ball too. So I mean, they had a nice balanced offense. It's not like they were giving Zenner the ball 40 times a game, and that's how he got his stats. That's
right.
Certainly,
they wanted to get Zenner the ball as much as possible, and you would see him get 25, sometimes even 30 carries a game. You're like, you're going to wear this guy down. But Zenner has just been a workhorse, and he's been very strong and reliable running back for them.
Mm-hmm. No, you did mention the kind of the white running back stigma. There's the guys out there like Danny Woodhead. We saw Rex Burkhead actually make a couple plays for the Bengals on Saturday. Do you think that maybe combined with his shy? I know he's kind of a shy person. He's kind of hard get guys get in for an interview. Do you think that's that is going to play into it at all, or is he just such a motivated person on the field?
I think he's a motivated player. He's very smart. He wants to go, I think, to med school after the NFL thing doesn't work out. He's an all-around good kid, and I think with the NFL kind of going through where you have these players that are they worth the risk and have these flags about their character and stuff, there's nothing to worry about with Zenner. His work ethic, his toughness, and his productivity, I think, speaks for itself. And that's not even getting into his character, which is fantastic as well. I think he will find a spot for him. And I think the two teams, at least, that stand out to me, Baltimore and Indianapolis. Indianapolis clearly needs some help with getting a running back because the Trent Richardson trade hasn't worked out. So I'd look at those two teams as maybe some of the better fits for Zach Zenner, and maybe even Atlanta too. Any place where he can go in and get a chance to prove what he's got, he will certainly do what the coaches ask of him. He'll be a good teammate, and I hope that he has a fairly long and successful NFL career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were, talking about earlier about Adam Vinatieri. There is some people from South Dakota State that have played in the pros. In case obviously Vinatieri is from the same school as Zenner. Adam Timmerman played a bunch of years as an offensive lineman for the Green Bay Packers. Was a 7th round pick. Coincidentally enough, I just have my little cheat sheet up here. The Lions actually took another offensive lineman by the name of Lynn Bowden in 1975 in the first round out of South Dakota State. So only played about 4 years, but that's pretty awesome to have a guy drafted in the first round from a non-Division I school.
Absolutely. Yep. Anytime you get that, that's real good. And of course, as you mentioned, Adam Vinatieri, probably the most famous of the players that have come out of South Dakota State, and of course, he's still playing. Kicking well, too, having a career year. Yeah,
definitely. And Timmerman was, like I said, an offensive lineman for the Packers. He was an absolute bruiser up there in Green Bay. Nick, do you have any more questions there for Nate?
Yeah, just one more about Zach Zenner. Was he an every down back? Did he stay on the field for passing downs, either as a receiver out of the backfield or as a pass blocker?
Yes. Yep, he was as much of an every down back as you could get. They'll spell him every once in a while if he needs a play or two off, but they kept him in on third down for passing situations, blocking situations, and really they would only take him out when the game was really, truly out of reach. But, no, he was on the field probably as much as anyone on offense.
Okay. Well, Nate, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully when we can have you maybe come on again sometime and talk about how he's doing in the NFL.
Would love to do that, Josh, and I'll try and get you on the show when I do the draft preview there in April. Would love to have you on again.
All right. We'll certainly do that. Thank you, sir.
Have a good day. Thanks, Josh. You too.
Okay, well, we are now passing through our ATS guru guide, philosophical leader, if you will. I'm delaying because I don't have his music up. Hold on 1 second. No laughing, Chuck. Just hold on. I know I make some schneid comment about it, that song every time, but I'm really all about that song, except for that weird little voice thing. What is that? I mean, I'm actually even start moving my head, a little dancing, and then that voice just makes it stop.
Yeah.
Stop whatever I'm doing.
I have no idea, Josh, what that is. I heard it on a television commercial. I sound hounded it, got the name of the song, and put it on my iPod because I liked it so much.
All right. I just vision you in your kitchen cooking, just, cranking up a boiling thing of soup, and you're just dancing all over the place. That's what I think about when I see that.
Actually, I think it was a commercial for a liquor, and I believe it was Tia Maria Liquor was what it was for, but I haven't seen it in a long time. Hey, just went down to the sports book this morning and got the latest spreads off of the board there. at the station's casinos. There wasn't a whole lot of surprise. The Patriots have gone from 7.5 down to 7. Other than that, well, the Broncos went from 7.5 down to 7. So it looks like a lot of these games are settling right on that critical point. But there was one thing that was very interesting this morning, you guys. The odds to win, when I get the sheet, I look up at the board and see if anything has changed. All of the odds to win the Super Bowl are pretty much the same. The Panthers are the longest shot at 20-1. The Seahawks are 9-5. They're the favorites right now. But in the odds to win the respective conference titles, the Ravens is the only one that's changed. They've gone down from 8-1. They've gone down to 5-1 to win the AFC. The rest remain the same. Patriots are 5-6, Broncos 8-5, and the Colts are 6-1.
Okay. Thank you for that synopsis. I was actually going to ask you about that. Fortunately, we couldn't do an odd before the playoffs because we didn't have a podcast last week. But those are always fun to watch too. And just so everybody knows, my dog left in the fight as I bet on the Patriots in the preseason to win the Super Bowl, which was only 7-1. But I also bet on the Bengals and the Eagles, and those were way better odds. But I'll still take the Patriots winning the Super Bowl this year. So I guess I'll try not to let that influence my ATS picks, but you know where my heart lies.
Well,
I'm putting that out.
Well, Josh, I mean, look at it. You bet at the beginning of the season at 7-1. They're now 2-1, so you're certainly ahead of the game right there.
Yeah, I thought 2 of 3 making the playoffs wasn't too bad. So
that's right. You can also start hedging it if when the Patriots get to the championship game, just go ahead and bet against them a couple games, and you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I feel
guarantee yourself some money.
Okay. Well, Chuck, I know how much you love taking double-digit underdogs, but I'm going to let Nick do the one first. I'm looking at Seattle hosting Carolina, Nick. 10.5 points is what we got. What do you think? Is that crazy?
You know what? It's a little bit crazy, but I think Seattle wins this by 2 touchdowns. I just think that defense is playing lights out. I don't see Carolina scoring more than 14 points in this game, and I think Seattle can score, closer to 28 probably. So I'll take the Seahawks, even with the 10.5 points.
Okay. And since we only have 4 games, Nick, what do you think about the over/under being 39.5?
39. Yeah, it's close there. I'd probably go over, but not by much.
Yeah, it's always intriguing to go over when that game is under 40 in the NFL, but you just don't know. Chuck, what do you got for us?
Yeah, a thing to remember is that the total is low for a reason, and that's because they aren't going to score a lot of points. So, everything's relative. Let's look at the Carolina offense for a second, though. In last week's wild card game, they were in Arizona territory 11 times, and 6 times they didn't score any points. Newton's 2 touchdown passes, they were both dump-offs where he threw it short, and the receiver, Fozzie Whitaker, and I believe the other one was their tight end, ran for 39 and 34 yards on those. Mm-hmm. I don't see, as good as Arizona's defense was, it just kind of tired out. I don't see Seattle's defense tiring out at all. And they're better than the Arizona defense. They're in Seattle. I have a tough time envisioning Carolina scoring more than 7. I want to say 3, but let's say 6 or 7 points, somewhere around there. Seattle scores like 21, so I'm going to say they're going to stay under that 39.5, and I am going to surprise. You know that I really believe in it if I pick on Seattle, because I believe they've been overrated all year. But I think Seattle's offense will find a way to score anywhere from 17 to 21 points. Carolina limited to less than 7. So let's go under, and let's call for the Seahawks to cover that. You say 10.5, I have 11, but it doesn't matter. They'll cover the spread.
Okay. you make a very valid points there. And Fozzie Whitaker is actually one of their backup running backs, though they have many. So he actually didn't throw a touchdown pass to a receiver. So, and I think the Seattle secondary is okay. I don't remember any of the guys that play there, but I think they're okay. And you have been dogging Seattle all year, so we know you really mean it when you take Seattle with double-digit points. Holy cow!
Especially in a playoff game.
Yeah. I'm going to pick Carolina here, and I don't think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to win by any means at all, but I think Seattle, having been there before, is a smart enough team to play smart football. I don't think you're going to see them open this game up. I know Nick said 2 touchdowns, and I'm not saying they won't lead this game by 2 touchdowns at some point, but I think if that were to happen, I think you're just going to see beast mode with 3-yard carries and just eating that clock. I think if they get up by something like that, I think they're just going to take this game and hold it and not do anything to they're going to play conservative. I'm not saying they're going to play not do anything and kneel down and waste the clock, but I feel like they could do that, and I feel like that's going to also maybe lead to some garbage points for Carolina. I see like a 17-9 type of game, or 20-12, that type of thing, with Gordon Gano kicking a lot of field goals. So I think Carolina just comes in and maybe loses by 10. So that's where we're gonna go. Chuck, do you think there's a weird history with double-digit favorites in the playoffs?
You know what? I did not look that up, so I cannot tell you.
Well, come on. We've been off of our game, bud. What's up? But anyway, we will have more with Chuck next week.
By the way, also Panthers defensive tackle star Lotulelei is out for this game.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big loss for them. That's a big loss for them, and that could mean lots for beast mode, certainly. Let's move on to the other Saturday game. Baltimore at New England. The number is just a touchdown. Chuck, what do you got for us?
Yeah, do you have 7?
7, yep.
7-48 is what I have here. Anyway, by the way, anybody who's thinking that weather is going to be a problem, the really, really cold temperatures are throughout the week, and the temperatures are going to start coming back on the weekend. So it's not going to be bitterly cold in any of these places. It will still be cold by Las Vegas standards, as far as I'm concerned, but nothing that people can't handle. Ravens are an interesting study. In their last 14 games in the playoffs, they're 10-4 straight up and against the spread, and they have exceeded expectations. We're talking about as far as the Las Vegas point spread goes, by an average of 7.1 points per game. And only one of those 4 losses has been by double digits in their last 14 playoff games. The Ravens turn into a different team in the postseason. Joe Flacco seems to just get good judgment when he gets into the playoffs. It is hard to go against New England on their home field, but I am going to go. I mean, New England can win this by 3 points. That's okay, but I'm going to take the Ravens and get 7 points, especially with a team that's got such a great postseason record.
Okay, I'm not positive about this, but I'm pretty sure I saw somebody post something on Twitter that Tom Brady is 0-4. So this is Twitter, so it's not necessarily truth, but 0-4 versus Joe Flacco in the playoffs. So just putting that out there. Nick, what do you got for us?
I'm going to take New England. If that stat's true, I think that just provides extra motivation for Tom Brady to come out here and just have a great game. I just haven't been a big believer in Baltimore all season. I'm not sure what it is, but something about them I'm just not buying it. So I think Pittsburgh probably would have beat them had Le'Veon Bell been healthy and available and 100% last week. So I'm going to take New England, and I don't think this is going to be a super high-scoring game. So I'll probably go under on this.
I had 47.5, by the way, on the over/under. That's not mine. That's just what I'm looking at right now on CBS Sportsline. I kind of disagree. I think this will be a high-scoring game. I'm not going to bet over by any means because I don't like the number right there. But I would not be surprised if this was like a 35-30 type game. I don't really know with this spread. It just seems too big for an NFL playoff game. So I'm going to take Baltimore, but I still think New England wins this game. Like I said, 35-30. I think would be right about spot on. And I just want to say right now, I have this weird feeling that Tom Brady is going to be the leading rusher in this game for New England. I don't know why, but with that running back carousel, who knows? And if he's not the leading rusher, I bet you Brady scores a rushing touchdown and nobody else does. But anyway, just throwing that out. Chuck, what do you got for us with Green Bay hosting Dallas? Same spread, 7 points.
Okay, it was 6 this morning, but I'm going to mark this 7 so I know what I picked with you guys. 53 is the over-under.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had 6 too. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, good.
Get
yeah,
that
the Broncos
eraser out.
are 7. Broncos are 7, right? Yeah.
Yep, and 53 was the over-under I had.
This is interesting. You'll probably agree that in order for the Cowboys to keep it close, to keep Aaron Rodgers off of the field, that DeMarco Murray is going to have to have a good game, right? Going to have to control the ball. I read an interesting thing as I was preparing for the show on the internet this morning, and in the last 3 years, the leaders in rushing attempts in the NFL. Hope you can stick with me. This was on a site called pregame.com. Running backs who lead the league in rushing attempts have averaged like 335. This year, DeMarco Murray had 392 rushing attempts. Now, if he can hold up, that's great. But in using the 335 number, in Murray's first 335 rushes this year, he averaged 5.0 yards. In his 76 rushing attempts that he's had since then, in the regular season and postseason, he's averaged only 3.3 yards. So the theory, I kept hearing these theories that DeMarco Murray is going to break down. He's carrying the ball too much. It seems to bear that out. He has not been averaging as many yards per carry since he reached that 335 mark. Add to that the fact that the Dallas defense is 25th in allowing yards per play in the league, and 28th in sack percentage, is going to give Aaron Rodgers a lot of opportunities. Now, it's kind of scary to pick the Packers in this game because Dallas has been so good on the road this year. But I am going to go ahead and take the Packers minus 6 points in this game, and 53 is a lot of points to give in an NFL game. But I'm going to go ahead and go over on that one also. So let's do Packers and over.
Okay. Nice work dropping the nugget of knowledge there via RJ Bell of our pregame.com.
Oh, no, you know what? It wasn't RJ Bell. It was a different guy writing on. And I got to give him credit. I've got his name right here. It's Dave Malinsky, who is a very very knowledgeable sports handicapper.
Okay, and that is RJ Bell's site, pregame.com.
Yeah, that's RJ Bell's site, and
great stat. And definitely great.
Yeah, he has a lot of different writers writing on that, and this is from Dave. So I found that little nugget, and I thought it was very interesting.
It's been a while since we've talked about doiling the game, but I think if you could doil this one to where it'd be pick 'em, that means you could just pick. Doiling means you get 6 points both either way you want to go. So you could doil this down to just Green Bay winning the game and up to 59. I think that would be the way to go. Of course, both things have to happen for you to win your bet. But it always sounds like a good idea. But both things have to happen to win your bet.
We call those teasers here.
Oh yes, tease it. Yes, I've heard that term too. And I can see our old ATS guru now, Tim, raising his fingers like he's massaging the belly of an undercarriage of a car, as he would say, teaser. But I think that might be the way to go. That being said, I will still take the Packers to win this game. But I would probably lean towards the under if I had to, just because I think that's a lot. Generally speaking, and maybe Chuck can back me up with this, I think there are less points scored in the playoffs. Granted, it's a different game nowadays, but there's usually less points scored in the playoffs than the regular season. As an average as a whole. So
usually a little more conservative, but it makes me suspicious when the over/under is that high. Who knows? I mean, that's just a shot in the dark on my over on that one. It's just that when the points are high, they're trying to get you to go under, so I look at it that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that over/under is so high because I don't know what it is, but what Green Bay has done to people at home this year, there was a stretch there where just like, oh my goodness, who is going to go into the playoffs and beat them in their own house? Had they beat Seattle that first week of the season, I think, people would be all over Green Bay to win the Super Bowl. But,
Josh, there's one more thing to consider, and that is the fact that I don't know if Aaron Rodgers' calf is fully healed either. So, he may not be as mobile, and that may hold the score down a little bit too.
Yeah, that's a very good point there. I know he was having a doctor visit today, so I'm sure there'll be news all over the place. But right now, the only news that he is not practicing today. So certainly something to keep in mind. I don't see a scenario where he does not start the game for the Packers unless, he was to break his leg in the cold pregame. But I think he's going to be out there. But it's certainly going to be something to consider when you lay some money down this bet. And one thing I want to say before we let Nick talk is I think I just want to put the names Micah Hyde and Dwayne Harris out there. I know Hyde plays a lot of defense for the Packers, but both of those guys are kind of key special teams players. Both of them are return men. Dwayne Harris also makes a ton of tackles on kickoffs and punts. I think a special teams touchdown, obviously, like it always does, but there could be a big special teams play in this game by either one of those two guys, and I think that's going to go a long way in determining ultimately the outcome of this game. So keep an eye on Dwayne Harris, number 17 for Dallas, and I believe Micah Hyde is number 33 for Green Bay. Nick, what do you got for us?
Well, we'll start with the over/under, 53 points. I know you guys talked about how in the playoffs points are usually less than they are in the regular season, but I think that probably has more to do with the teams that make the playoffs usually have pretty good defenses, whereas these two teams their defenses don't really stand out that much. So I'll take the over even at 53. And as far as the 6-point spread, because of that 6-point spread, I'm going to go with Dallas. This game to me feels like a last-second field goal is going to win it, or some sort of the game's going to come down to the wire, I think. So that 6 points seems a little high, so I'll go ahead and take the underdog Dallas. Okay,
well, and be ready for the ice bowl metaphors too as this game starts to get underway. Of course, referring, as I've been so often today, for some reason, referring back to I think a late '60s NFL championship game or NFC championship game featuring these exact two teams. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Ice Bowl.
Yeah, I actually I watched that game. I remember on TV. So that kind of tells you how old I am. Anyway. I had one more question. Is Chris Christie going to be in the Cowboys box for this game?
I don't know. I have an interesting story about that whole situation. I'll probably get to that next week. But it'll be
I want to hear it now.
No, I'm not prepared.
Okay.
It involves a friend of mine and a reporter for the Eagles who wrote a really weird article about the Cowboys, and we'll get into it next week when I have all the specs.
And there was street construction. There was street construction outside of her house the next day.
Well, there was some graphic emails in her exchange. We'll
interesting.
Say that. Yes. But anyway, we have one more game to get to. Everybody picked that one. Right? All right. Am I forgetting anybody? All right. Indianapolis at Denver. Coincidentally, I was in Denver yesterday. I was there obviously a week too early. But drove past the stadium a couple times. Went to a hockey game right next to the stadium. So, but anyway, that doesn't make any sense. Colts 12-5 at former Colts quarterback, the 12-4 Denver Broncos. The number is 7. Nick, what do you got for us? 54.5 is over under.
54.5. That's too much. I'm going to go with the under on this one. I know the rationale I used with the Dallas Green Bay could work just as well with this game, but the way Peyton Manning seemed to have slowed down towards the end of the year, and the whole Broncos offense, other than their running game with C.J. Anderson, I just can't see that many points being scored. And I'm going to go ahead and take Indianapolis in the upset in this one. Peyton Manning isn't the same quarterback now as he was back in September. I think the years are starting to catch up to him, or the cold, or something. But I'm going to go with the Colts to win this one.
Okay. I want my first inclination is the over, and when I second guess myself, that's when I get in trouble. So I'm going to go with the over in this game. I feel like every time that Luck throughout his career has had a big game against Manning or Brady, for whatever reason, there is a ton of points scored. These guys want to outdo each other. I think the week of rest will do wonders for Manning. I think it will really help him. And, he is always prepared to play. Maybe not physically 100% at this point, but he's going to be with a game plan and mentally there. Maybe not line up in shotgun the first play of the game, but I think he's going to be ready. I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take the Colts to stay within 6, but I think there's no way the Broncos lose this game. I think this is Manning against his former team, and I just don't think they have enough weapons defensively and offensively to out-duel Peyton at home in the playoffs. I don't see it's going to happen. Like I said, I'm going to take the points with the Colts, but I'm telling you now, Broncos are going to win this game. And I'm a Raiders fan, so chew on that. Chuck, what do you got for us?
It's strange, whether it's by design or whether it's because Peyton has some injury we don't know about, but the Broncos have seemed to want to establish themselves as a team that runs the ball, and maybe they're just letting us all fall asleep on them, and then they'll start passing it all of a sudden. But for that reason, I definitely want to take the unders because obviously when a team runs the ball more, it takes more time off the clock. And if the Broncos are going to continue to run the ball, it's not going to get over. I've got 53.5 here, but it's not going to get over at that rate. Now, interesting thing about this game, let's go back to last week. The Colts quarterback, Andrew Luck, was sacked only once against the Bengals. But that was against the Bengals defense that was last in sacks in the NFL with only 20. The Colts offensive line has only one player that started all 16 regular season games. It's a patchwork offensive line. Now they're going into Denver. Keep in mind they allowed one sack at home last week against the Bengals. Now they're going into Denver against a team that has more than twice as many sacks as the Bengals this year. And also, a thing I've been harping on the last part of the season, the Colts don't do well against good teams. The only playoff teams that they beat this year were playoff teams from the AFC North, Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And actually, they lost to Pittsburgh. They beat Baltimore and Cincinnati. When they played a good team early in the season, Philadelphia, they lost to them. They lost to the Broncos first game of the season. They lost to Pittsburgh, and they lost to New England, and they lost to Dallas. And they lost to New England and Dallas really big. The Colts are kind of a pretender team. They're good against the bad teams, but against the good teams, they can't hold up for some reason. They just can't. This year, they can't hold up. They got lucky that they were in a weak division and won that division easily, but against the good teams, no. So I'm going to call for the Broncos to win it by more than 7, but I still think that there's not going to be enough points scored in that game to get over the number.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you both make a very good point about C.J. Anderson and the rushing that he has done, and he's been phenomenal. So let's not discount that and just talk about, man, he's been phenomenal for this team. But I think if it comes to it, if the Colts have a lead in this game, Manning's going to be ready, and they have weapons. They had that week off, and I'm basically saying Anderson has been done so well the last handful of weeks because they haven't had to throw the ball. I know they've been able to cruise to a couple victories just on him, and I think that's kind of their mindset is we're going to use Anderson, and if we stop him or if the game is 2 scores, that's when we're going to throw. And Manning obviously has thrown a few decent passes in the NFL career, so they kind of have Manning in the passing game maybe a fallback plan right now. But I think if they need to amp it up, I think you're going to see Manning at his best. And don't worry about the weather or anything else there. It's going to be he's going to be just fine. Well, that's all the ATS picks. We'll be back next week with just a couple, but with Chuck. So, Chuck, as always, thank you for joining us. It's been absolutely great to hear your voice. I don't know if I've ever said that on the podcast, but you have a really great voice. I guess I'm kind of the leader of this podcast, but I don't consider myself to have a radio voice. I do listen to the show back, so to make sure I can be better. But you have the radio voice. So no disrespect to Nick.
I have to tell you something. I have to tell you something on that, Josh. In being in the radio business for like 20 years or so, there are a lot of guys with great voices, but you have to, if you sound knowledgeable, your voice just automatically. What I'm saying is you think you don't have a good voice, but just by being a moderator and being smooth as you are, then, oh boy, hang on just a second. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, just being smooth and sounding like you know what you're doing, that makes your voice sound 10 times better. No matter what it is. So knowledge is better than having a voice. Put it that way.
And that's why Nick is so gosh darn smooth. That's for certain. But anyway, Chuck, we'll talk to you next week, sir.
I can't wait. Can't wait to see who wins the games this weekend, too.
All right. Take care, sir. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay. See you later.
All right, Mr. Smooth Nick. One more topic here. What do we think about this Giants offense? And I know we love the sad Eli face here at the podcast. But it seemed to me that they really fed Odell Beckham the ball there at the end of the year, probably going to win him the Rookie of the Year award. But let's face it, if this team comes back with Rashard Jennings healthy and, Andre Williams has got a little bit of experience under his belt and they get Victor Cruz back, we got to be concerned about this Giants offense. They could be pretty darn good, right, next year?
Pretty good. I'd say probably a top 10 offense maybe. I don't know if they'd be considered like a top 5 offense. Just you look at Eli Manning, he's been so inconsistent throughout his whole career. Rashard Jennings is getting healthy, yeah, but he's also getting kind of older for a running back. And the offensive line did struggle kind of in 2014. They're definitely intriguing, though. I mean, you remember Cruz was at his best when he had a productive Hakeem Nicks on the other side of the field. So there's a lot of intrigue around this New York Giants offense heading into 2015, that's for sure.
Yeah, Preston Parker stepped up and had a few decent games for them. Ruben Randall actually finished the season quite well opposite Odell Beckham. So, something about them reminds me a little bit of the Greatest Show on Turf, and they already had the Super Bowl history. But I think, Randall, Cruz, and Beckham especially, 3 wide receiver sets can open things up. And, they certainly have some good things going there. And, unfortunately, bad news for Redskins fans, Nick. But what's going on in Washington?
Is there ever good news for Redskins fans?
RG3's going to be back next year, right? That's good news for you, at least.
Yeah, well, depending on what the new GM wants They just hired a new GM yesterday. He's got a good track record working in San Francisco and Seattle, but Washington just seems to be a black hole that ruins the bottom. So we'll see.
Oh, I know of another black hole. But anyway, anything else you got for us today, bud?
I can't really think of anything. Enjoy the games this weekend.
Yes, and we'll be back next week with Jeff Lloyd. I want to thank obviously Charlie Blatch for joining us. That was great insight. Nate Stacken from StackAttack.com. Make sure you go there and check out his stuff. He's a talented kid, and he's got some good things going for him there. So we appreciate Nate, and like I said, he's been on before, so we love what he does over there in Brookings, and he's had me on his radio show too. So that's pretty awesome. Like I said, next week we'll have Jeff Lloyd from the RSEN Network, has his own show as well and writes for the Draft Report. Has a show called The Draft Room on Mondays 8:30. So make sure to check that out. You can find him on Twitter as well at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Good friend of Brian Luis, who's also been on the podcast, and coincidentally another Jets. We have so many Jets fans on this podcast. The gang green is everywhere. But anyway, he's also a Florida State fan, so I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Jameis Winston, who just declared apparently he's going to the pros. No surprise there. But we'll have plenty to talk about next week as we get closer and closer to the Super Bowl and free agency and draft. Just because all season's done, people, doesn't mean we are going to stop doing this podcast. We had a little bit of a break for Christmas, but we are back, and trust me, we are back in full effect, and because we just love doing it. We like talking NFL, and that's what we do here for you. So, at RotoRob, thanks to Nick, as always, for being an awesome, smooth co-host, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the RotoRob Fantasy Football Weekly Podcast with Nick. Hail to the Redskins, Wagner, and my dad, Joshua Johnson. This is so much more than a fantasy show.
I've never been a part of a tie. Never even knew that was in the rule book. We settled with a tie. But when the play was called, I kind of figured that I guess there's ties in the NFL. So